Yep. We'll do our whakataka in Māori and then English. If I just join along. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mākinakina ki uta, kia mātaratara ki tai, e hi aki ana te ātakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Cease the winds from the west, cease the winds from the south, let the breeze blow over the land, let the breeze blow over the ocean. Let the red-tipped dawn come with a sharpened ear, a touch of frost, a promise of a glorious day. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you, Henny Wai. Okay, everybody. We have a long meeting and it's quite complicated because we have lots of different papers all over the place. I'm expecting some of you to lose your place. I just hope I don't lose my place too much. But and I'll just get onto it now. But it is not going to be easy following the agenda and going backwards and forwards. So, having said that, do we have any apologies? We are all here, aren't we? We are, no apologies. Any notices? James, I just have one point. In the workshop, we are discussing the proposal to postpone the rate increase. So that's in the workshop. Following the workshop, will you come back with a paper for the following week with a decision item?
It probably won't be the following week, but we certainly will be coming back with a decision item. What we're seeking today is some guidance from Council about the analytical work that you want done to prepare a decision paper. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Right, okay, just clear that up. There are no other notices? Okay,
just wondering, Mr. Chair, if we've received any information from Councillor Lambert.
Ah, well, Charlie's not here. No. James, do you know whether he has a hospital board, a DHB meeting today?
Where are we? It's should be the 1st and 3rd of each Wednesday. So it's the second week Wednesday. So I think the answer to that's no. I'll just text him now and make sure that he has the password.
Sorry, not to interrupt, Chair, it's Leanne here.
Leon?
I've
Yeah.
just emailed the link and the password through to Charlie. He was having trouble getting on.
Okay, so he'll turn up. Thanks, Leanne.
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Sheriff?
I would like to give notice that I will be preparing a paper to Council for next week's meeting.
Okay. What subject are you on, Sheriff?
Stock order.
Stock order, okay. Right.
Chair, sorry, can I just be a little bit formal at this point in time? So papers for Council are prepared by staff. What we obviously can receive as a notice of motion with a series of accompanying narratives about a particular issue. If Councillor Van Beek wants to put that forward, if he would like to circulate a paper for discussion in a workshop context or something, we can certainly accommodate that. Can I suggest that Councillor Van Beek have a discussion with either myself or the relevant group manager, and we just work through how we can bring forward whatever it is that he would like brought to the table for discussion, just so we remain compliant with standing orders to the extent that we can.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, James. Are you okay with that, Sheriff?
Yeah, and actually I have done that, so that's in progress.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Do we have any conflict of interest declarations? We have none. So we confirm the minutes of the previous meeting. Do we have any comments on those minutes? Do we have someone to move? Craig moves, seconded by Henny. All those in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Moved. Right, we'll move straight to decision item 4, James. That's the the paper confirming what we're actually doing at the moment. Do you want to speak to that, or it's pretty self-explanatory? I think you should speak briefly to it, though. James, you're on mute.
Mute.
I appreciate that, Chair. Sorry, I'm just working the many papers that I have in front of me, just making sure that I'm speaking to the correct item. Going between Stella and...
Given the range of papers, sorry, Mr. Chair, given the range of papers that are going through, could we specify which document we're relating to at the moment?
We're on
the
the original agenda, Api. So it's the original agenda. I'm not sure what the paper's numbered as, but it's in the beginning of the series of papers. And it has the decision items 4 and 5, and then it goes into information papers. It's the original. Has everyone got onto that original agenda?
Yep.
So,
welcome, Charlie.
Sorry, Chair. So we're skipping the significant organisational activity update, and we're going straight to the interim process for committee recommendations to council. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I haven't got that significant thing on that agenda. Where is that?
Sorry, on the run sheet that was sent out, that's the numbering's confusing because it goes 1.
Oh yes, sorry, James. You did right. Significant operational update, item 9. Sorry, I did skip that. My apologies. So we'll go straight to that. Okay.
Here I say, Chair, you're having a good day.
Oh yeah. Wait for Neil to tell him I'm having a shocker. Where are you, Neil? Just settle down. Keep mute on there, Neil. We like that little red thing there.
Look, Chair, everybody could be forgiven for finding it challenging managing multiple documents and multiple applications while running several screens. Look, we'll take the report as read and happy to take any questions. I might just introduce the item simply by noting that we continue to have a significant proportion of our staff dedicated to the regional civil defence welfare response. We have made good strides in the last week since I last briefed council on transitioning some of that burden to our colleagues at the Napier City and Hastings District Councils. And in that regard, we will continue to have a significant role, but we're essentially just rebalancing the effort between the 3 councils so it's more sustainable over the 12-week period that we're required by government at this stage to maintain that welfare response. In addition to that, we're obviously continuing to maintain our essential services as outlined in the report. And in that regard, I just note that we are achieving 100% performance of our hydrometric network at the moment, which means that our ability to manage a flood event or to monitor the drought event is in full capacity. Now that's a large and complex monitoring system that requires continuous maintenance. So I just want to acknowledge the Environmental Information Team for their work, particularly in the field, which is pretty lonely at this point in time, in managing that and keeping that system all up. The other area of essential service, obviously, is our pollution response area, and in that regard, we're having a relatively subdued level of activity across the region, which I believe relates directly to the low level of economic activity occurring in the region at the same time. In all other areas of council functions, staff are continuing to make good progress on desktop-based work. And as I advised last week, we do see a 4-week period as providing a relatively minor level of disruption to our work programs overall. Should the lockdown be extended significantly beyond the 4-week period, that's when we'll start biting into our ability to complete an awful lot of our current work plan for this current annual plan year. The leadership of the organisation within the management team is focusing at the moment on preparing for a lift in the lockdown to level 3 or 2, and working through what are those functions that the organisation performs that can be restored to as close to normal function as possible as soon as those restrictions are lifted, and those which we can continue to maintain on a work from home basis, particularly in level 3, to minimise the chance of contributing to community transmission. So we're just working that through, including with central government and our colleagues in other regional councils, so that we take a consistent approach to the resumption of activity. And look, it's probably also worth saying that in relation to that resumption of activity, it's likely that we'll have to be doing things differently, even within those lockdown restrictions being lifted. So I guess that what that means is maintaining social distancing and separation from staff, and so that have an impact on some of our work practices and some of the deployment of resources such as vehicles and what have you. So that planning, I can assure you, is underway, but for now the organisation is in a stable position, and we maintain a high level of readiness for another adverse event layering over the top of this. And indeed, last week, the National Crisis Management Centre and the Beehive sent instruction to all councils to do scenario planning around both an earthquake and a flood. And so while we've maintained operational readiness and we have standing plans to respond to those sorts of events, we are doing specific scenario planning right now, which we are required at this stage to have completed by the end of tomorrow, so that we can provide assurance to central government that we are ready to go in the event that we have such an event. But otherwise, happy to take questions on the report, and the organisation's in good heart right now.
Thank you, James. Questions, Craig?
Thanks, Chair. James, you just mentioned doing scenario reports for natural disasters, and the answer may lie in another discussion we'll have later today, but presumably you've also been doing scenario analysis for the council, given the various communications and initiatives from central government. Don't need to answer that now if that's not the right place, but scenario analysis economically and financially is happening as well.
Yes, it is, and that's probably what we can discuss a bit more in the workshop this afternoon, but I can assure the community that we are doing scenario planning around our annual plan for the 2020-21 year in terms of the economic backdrop and the impact that's likely to have on council revenue, and our options for managing that, both in terms of our operational expenditure and the use of our balance sheet.
Any other questions for James? There are none.
I think Neil's speaking, but he's on mute.
Oh, put your hand up, Neil.
Don't encourage him.
Oh, sorry, we're away now. Sorry about that. James, just going through, if I could, there are about 3 or 4 issues that I wanted to touch on from the report. Can I go to asset management items 13, 14 and 22, and it's to do with surveillance patrols and access to rivers, etc. Has there been noted unauthorised access taking place? I just note, for example, the number of people tenting in the Waitangi Naruro River area. Have you had any feedback on what's happening with those patrols?
So in general terms, I understand that we have been having issues with gates being or locks being broken and people attempting to re-access areas of our river berms that have been closed. We've also, as you say, we've got some freedom campers happening on land either adjacent to our land, on district council land, or within our schemes, and we're working with the district council on that. And look, the other thing is we are noticing that a number of our signs which have been erected around the cycleways are being taken down or destroyed, presumably by those that have a contrary view about whether or not they should be open for cycleways. So that's a high level response. I know that Chris Dolly's on the line, and he may be able to give you a more up to date, particularly in relation to those Freedom campers.
Yeah. So James, I can add to that. Look, we're working with both Napier and Hastings to have a consistent approach on Freedom campers, particularly in the areas where we have common or adjacent land holdings. The most important thing is that we find a place for those people to go, because we don't want to play a game of just pushing some of those campers from a regional council river area into a Hastings District Council reserve. And both Hastings and Napier are very much looking at the welfare aspects and identifying areas to relocate some of those people to, which is essentially campgrounds in either Hastings or Napier.
Thank you, Chris. Neil?
Neil, you're on mute, sorry.
Why does that do that? I don't know, it keeps chopping out. In terms of the item 27, TLA-focused economic recovery proposal, I'll come back to that in our workshop session. I think have we got scope to cover that in the workshop?
Yes, although it's probably best covered in the public excluded item today on economic recovery.
Sure, okay. Another item, this is corporate services this time, item 14, the cyber security risk. Are any incursions going on, do you know? I'm just aware of, even on this this exercise, the scope for incursion while we are speaking.
The short answer is yes, we are, and it's normal for us to have attempts to attack or access our systems. That's something which happens with a high degree of frequency. That is continuing, and I believe anecdotally has been increasing, but there hasn't been any successful attempts, and there hasn't been any disruption to our services that I've been advised of.
Thank you.
Sorry, James, Mr. Chair. If I can, sorry, Councillor, if I can just add too that we have brought in an interim risk manager who will be in the first instance working with our IT team just to do some analysis of that.
Thanks, Joe.
Further point, James, if you don't mind, this is under integrated catchment management section. It's item 17. We aren't collecting any water quality or ecological samples. Is there a relevance to that in terms of people swimming in the estuary and the likes at the moment? Are we on top of any potential health risks as a result of that issue?
So water quality monitoring for human health is a deemed essential service. Our swimming site monitoring program, I believe, has ended for the year, although Mr. Maxwell's online, so he may be able to update on that.
Yeah, so thanks, James. So, Councillor, yes, the rec bathing beach season's concluded, so we're not doing any recreational bathing beach monitoring anymore because it's not swimming season. And probably more to the point, people should not be swimming. And so, yeah, our water quality and ecology monitoring has ceased for the meantime because it's not practicable for us to do those or to do that work safely under level 4 conditions.
And it's not deemed an essential service by central government. And we have talked as a regional sector to central government about this monitoring, and they've been clear in the consistent practice across New Zealand is that monitoring for ecological purposes is not required and is not being undertaken. As I understand it, in terms of the integrity of our data sets, a month's non-monitoring doesn't present any significant issues. But if it goes on for a sustained period of time, we may lose the integrity of a full year's data in some places. And you can think about, for example, the Tuki catchment, where there is a rolling monitoring program that triggers various regulatory interventions. That may be compromised if we're unable to do water quality monitoring for environmental purposes for a sustained period. But at this stage, we're obviously hopeful, as is the rest of the country, that we move out of level 4 within the coming weeks, and that we will be able to resume that ecological water quality monitoring.
And just one more, James, the item 30, Ian might be able to help, drought monitoring, the reports status reports, are they able to be circulated to councillors?
Yes, I'm happy to do that, councillor. Our reporting goes into civil defence, emergency management, situational reporting. So we're, if you like, a subsection of the overall SITREP coming out of the GECC and the group. But happy to provide you information on the drought status at any time you want.
Neil, you're back on mute.
Oh, damn. Okay.
I'm
okay. Just one final one, Mr. Chair. It goes to Māori partnerships. Have we got a sense of how Māori communities, particularly Mahia Way, are coping, and have the issue around fishing or gathering kamoana? Has that been an issue in any part of our region?
I would defer to Michelle or Charles or Petty on that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Kia ora tātou. What do I understand in conversation with the Rongomawa Wahine Iwi Trust Chair, they're having a lot of issues out at Mahi, especially with swelling of population. So I think the new law that's come in place, the police are blocking the bridge and stopping. People are thinking they can come for a Easter break weekend in Mahia. When it comes to Kaimwan, I think they've, as I understand, they got a customary fish permit, and so they've been supplying kai through, I think, through their boats there. But the main issue was probably is the community is very worried about the influx of people that aren't the normal residents. So yeah, and I know they're trying to set up a checkpoint, but that may not be necessary with the new law that just come in place yesterday. And we've got a Wairoa collective group, and a lot of people have been looked after with kai and making sure those who can't go and get medications and groceries and everything are assisted. But yes, we have got a COVID positive tested person out there. It might be 3 now because we've got 3 in Wairoa. Not quite sure, but I presume they're all at Mahia. So that puts that 65% elderly population are there and at a lot of risk. So kia ora, hope that helps.
Kia ora, Councillor Curtin. Just to add to Michelle's kōrero, so a traffic management plan, this is coming from the controllers meeting this morning and from Nathan Heath, who's the incident controller there. The Mahia have put in a traffic management plan, and police are going out there to work with them in terms of how that's been laid down to vet any Mahia traffic, incoming traffic over the Easter break.
Thank you. Patty, we can't see you. Are you unable to activate your video? Because when I can't see you, I can't see whether your hand is up or not. So if everyone can have, thank you, there you are. Now, Api, you have a question for Chris. Do you want to ask that now?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was around the Freedom Campers you mentioned in your report, and whether or not, I put down here, are these Freedom Campers being tested before they're moved to these centres? Are there any measures to ensure their current well-being before being placed in centres? And then a supporting question around tracking and monitoring, because I was online with Te Wairoa this morning, and Michelle and Pierre might be able to validate the statements, but there have been a number of concerns of people moving through and moving into the region, same as with here. So just wondering how we're monitoring movement of known people, that more so than the testing.
Yes, I can provide some guidance. So we are tracking license plates of vehicles and things and working with police so we can see how people are moving from one location to another. To the best of my knowledge, there's no testing of those particular people, but once again, everyone has the accountability of if they are feeling sick or exhibiting flu-like symptoms to talk to the health line and arrange a test. So we're not requiring mandatory tests, but those testing facilities are there through the DHB.
Happy?
Supplementary question, please, Mr. Chair. Well, more of a statement. Chris, given that there is a track and a number of incidences across our local territorial authorities around concerns related to freedom campers and transient people moving in and around regions, it's already an identified problem. Could you make some inquiries with our emergency management people around if they are already a known problem, what is the rationale behind not testing people that are already exhibiting behavioural or behaviour patterns that are, well, undesirable?
I think I'll put that question to Rick rather than Chris.
Well, I'm not sure where Uppy's coming from. I'm not sure whether exactly how large this so-called problem is. People have been told to stop and stay where they are. That's the rule. The police are saying that there's more movement than they're comfortable with, and so they're putting up checks. And when people get moved, they're going to be asking where they're coming from, where are they going to. There were 12 checkpoints put up in Hawke's Bay yesterday. There'll be more today, and they'll continue over the weekend. So I would expect the movement of people to be greatly reduced. I don't think we have a regime yet in New Zealand of compulsory testing of people. I think it's a step that the government will be a bit reluctant to take. But at the moment, I'm not sure that we actually have a problem. If you think there is a problem, I know you think there is a problem, RP, but is there actually a problem? So most of the freedom campsites are very stable. People are parked up, not moving. The odd place where they are an issue, they've civil defence have moved them out and put them in camping grounds. Again, they're staying there. There's no issue with it.
RP, we can't carry on forever on this one, mate.
I just wanted, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to acknowledge that I was unaware of the range of roadblocks that are going out, so that'll help mitigate movement. And it's difficult at this time to really get solid data in an environment like this when you're trying to build your networks as you go along. But thank you for that detailed response, Councillor Barker.
Thank you. Will?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. James, just on regulation point 1, have we had or heard any response from the Ministry for Environment on relief to the consents issue?
Look, no, we haven't. We were in discussions with them last week about the problem, and we have put forward the solution. Just prior to the letter to the Minister, I did have a discussion with the Chief Executive of the Ministry for the Environment last Friday, and it was indicated to me that a resource management amendment bill had been prepared for budget and that there was a possibility that our issue could be addressed via that, and that is the work that's currently being undertaken. My expectation is that the Ministry is undertaking work now to prepare advice for the Minister, and we won't get a response from the Minister until he has received and considered that advice. So that may be some days or even possibly some weeks away, given everything else that they're balancing down there. So clearly that was behind our approach, which was publicised over the weekend and earlier this week around Plan B, which is the simplified consenting process. Chair, just while I'm on the topic more broadly, I should just reinforce the fact that we are working closely with the Ministry for the Environment and the regional sector around the impact of COVID-19 on the policy reform processes that central government had in train, particularly around the essential freshwater package. And we're presently preparing a letter from the regional council sector to government ministers about that reform package. The essence of the proposed messaging is that We support the government continuing with freshwater reform, and it's important that we continue to build on the work we've been undertaking. But we're also sounding a note of caution about the financial circumstance that many regional councils will be finding themselves in, from significant reductions in investment income, significant reductions in cost recovered income, the possibility of pressure on rates associated with an economic recession, and the collective capacity of our communities to undertake rapid reform of freshwater management in an environment where resources are scarce. So we're offering to work more closely with the government around how the package gets modified to be achievable in that macroeconomic context.
Thank you, James. I think I'd like to move on from this now. Do we have someone to move that we do accept the significant organisational activities? Thank you, Rick. Haniwai, you don't wish to speak, Rick, do you? Or Haniwai? Suffice to say, we're still busy. All those in favour? Aye. It's carried. Thank you very much. Yeah, just to be clear, I'm watching the screen the whole time, and if you just put your hand up like that, I'll write your name on a bit of paper as what I did last time, and I'll come back to you. So long as I'll kind of try and acknowledge and you'll see me, but and the discipline is fantastic at the moment, I should say, but just having a few, we just got to keep some discipline in this process. Thank you very much. Item 4, James.
Yeah, so this follows the issue that was raised by Councillor Barker last week about the double debate and ensuring that Council has the opportunity to reflect on decisions it makes before finalising those. So what we've proposed here is an arrangement whereby decisions that are urgent and require a decision of Council there and then on the day will stand. But those that would normally be considered by a council committee and are not of an urgent nature will be reconfirmed at the following council meeting to give councillors that opportunity just to reflect. So that's what's proposed, and happy to take any questions about that.
Thank you, James. It's a very simple confirmation of what we've already decided, but are there any questions? Thank you, Craig.
Just quickly, it's an interim, so it's just as more of a procedural tidy up and clean up to keep things running as smoothly as we can, given these unusual circumstances. That's it in a nutshell, isn't it?
Well,
yes.
Rick, will you move it and Craig second it? Thank you. Do you wish to speak, Rick, as the mover?
No, I'm happy with that. I think it's the Chief Executive explained really well. It's just a tidy up, just carrying on what we would previously done in a much shorter process in these difficult times. So it ensures we have the opportunity to reflect, but only a week, and I think that's a good thing.
Craig, do you wish to speak? We have spoken already. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? If not, we have a move and a second. All those in favour? Aye. It is carried. We will go to 5, which is equally as simple. James, I think we'll get you just to run through it, but it's pretty obvious.
Oh, look, I think the paper is self-explanatory. Leanne and Joe have pulled this together, and it's something that we did need to check in with Council following the elections last year about whether you wish to continue with the practice of the previous Council. The key change here is going from awards every 6 months to an annual awards process, which we think better reflects the level of demand, if you like, for these awards. And we are proposing that the 3 categories that had originally been agreed by the previous Council still stand. So that's the proposal.
Okay, is there any questions, especially from new councillors, on these awards? Craig?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I support the idea in motion. My just point really is, I used to go along to the larger Enviro awards and things like that, and we're always fascinated by the lack of applicants and attendance. So my point is, I presume resurrecting this will rest on some of the work and research you've done as why the other various awards or recognitions just did not seem to get much coverage or buy-in from the community. you know, and it was the same old, same old. I know it's really hard, and full praise to the initiative again, but will something change to try and get further ownership and engagement from those who are in this space?
So,
Can I respond to that, Chair?
Rick, and then James might comment.
I just say to you, Craig, a legitimate concern, but what this award does is to thank those people who've done, recognise and thank and appreciate those people who've done some outstanding work in the environmental area in our region. And every award we've given so far has been greatly appreciated by other people. Thank you is a small thing. And for some of the people who've received it, there's been decades of work. I've been really impressed by the response we've got to these awards, and I just think that when it was originally set up, it was every 6 months, and I think the staff are right. Now time to make it every 6 months, every 12 months, and I just think it works really well. I have no concerns you raise. I don't feel, don't worry me at all, Craig.
James, did you have a thought, comment?
Look, I think one of the things we did observe with the previous recipients was, I would say, a degree of modesty and possibly even shyness by the recipients about being recognised for what they do. And I think the reality with people that make efforts in this area is that they don't do it for recognition, and they often, are not inclined to put their heads above the parapet. And so what I think that means for these to be successful is we do need councillors to reach into their networks and keep their eyes open during the year, and to perhaps put their thinking caps on a little bit about who in the community might be going below the radar and is an unsung hero in this regard that deserves recognition. So the success of this will rely on you and your networks and your observations through the year. So if you keep this in the back of your minds that this process is going to crop up annually, so therefore when you're out in the community and you are observing good works, that you take that down and let us know at any stage through the year of anybody that you think is a worthy recipient, and we'll make sure that that's folded into the process.
Thank you. I'll move this.
Add one other point here and say that I do think there's one thing we need to think about, is that if we feel that there's for one category, there's no one passes the bar, then we shouldn't make the award.
That's right.
So we should make sure that it's truly a worthy reward. And I agree with James that these people do this because of their love and affection for their environment. They don't do it for thanks. So they're a shy bunch, but I still think they deserve a thank you.
You will second it, Rick, will you?
I will do.
Okay, I do wish to speak as the mover. I slightly disagree with James on that. Everyone we have awarded, bar one, have turned up, and they have been ecstatic. And on several occasions, they brought their entire family. This is a big deal, and people do labour away at these things. And when we come along and say, "You're so good, we want to give you an award," we've found, with the exception of one, that they were just over the moon about that. So I think it's a really important thing that we do. So I'm proud. I'm happy to move this. Rick, do you want to speak?
Just to add one thing, I think if there's any failure of the award system, in my opinion, it's the way that we make it sort of almost as an adjunct to our meeting. I think we could frame it a bit better and do the ceremony a little bit better, really. And I agree with the Rex. The people who turned up, we think they were just beamed, actually, really proud and grateful for the acknowledgement. Unexpected, but they've all been really grateful. It's been, I think, a great initiative.
Any other speakers? We can move on with this one. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Aye. Against? It's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got time for item 6, your report, James, verbal update on our operational response to the virus.
Chair, that's largely been covered in the significant activities report, so I won't repeat anything that's been provided in there. What I wanted to do though was just to highlight one item in the report, which was the subject of a media statement yesterday. And the context for this is that we have received guidance from central government about all councils being particularly circumspect about their compliance and enforcement activity at this time, given the constraints on the judicial system and the broader economic and social context we're in. We have been asked to think very carefully about whether we take prosecutions and look at alternative ways, potentially, such as infringement notices, abatement notices and the like, and only take prosecutions where we think it is strongly in the public interest to do so. So we did notify yesterday that we have laid charges in the Environment Court against a dairy farmer in the Tutaukuri catchment for the significant pollution incident that happened just prior to Christmas. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that that has occurred and to assure council that we gave specific consideration to whether we should proceed with this prosecution given the COVID-19 situation. And we have formed the view that owing to the nature of the scale of this impact and of the history with the operator itself, that this was a prosecution that was very much in the public interest to proceed with. So that's point number one. The second point is that the operational activity report covers our core HBRC functions, but doesn't cover the entire HBRC group, which obviously also includes our shareholding in the port of Napier. I have had a discussion this morning with the CEO of the port, and I just wanted to pass on a little bit of a snapshot of the operational activity occurring there. The port is, like all organisations, having to manage a constrained workforce in terms of those who have health conditions or family circumstances that preclude them from coming to work. And also they're having to institute a range of on-port restrictions around the way people work together, etc., to manage the COVID-19 risks. This has had an impact on their ability to operate as a business as usual organisation, even though they are an essential service. And that has coincided with the peak of their exporting season. So they have had some record days recently in terms of the volume of throughput. And so given that constraint on their workforce, it has been somewhat of a silver lining that some parts of their trade have come to a halt. So the port is now almost entirely clear of logs, and obviously the pulp industry is on hold at the moment, so there's no pulp coming through. That has actually enabled the port, with the constraints they currently face, to continue with the container volumes and managing the container volumes coming off the horticultural sector. And so while they have been very, very busy and very constrained, they have been managing to keep this lifeline of the region economically to our export markets alive. And obviously the cruise ship market has come to an end as well, although the season had more or less come to an end by the time the COVID situation really started to bite. So the port is reporting that they are managing to maintain those export flows, but I would say by the skin of their teeth, really, in terms of just the constraints on the workforce. They will be issuing trade data to the market in April, the end of April, into this month, and then that will be followed by earnings guidance to the NZX and their overall financial forecasts in May. So we'll understand the financial impact on the port of the situation then. And I think, as I understand from the CEO, that given that we are in the peak of the season and given that it has been a very busy season for the port, the first 6 months of the year might not look terribly different, but it is the following 6 months where there is the high degree of uncertainty. This is through to their September year end. So that's where that uncertainty lies, and we'll need to keep a close eye on that, obviously, in relation to both the port's contribution to the regional economy and also its contribution to our investment income. Wharf 6 construction is currently on hold while we're in lockdown, and the Port is working with the contractors about the resumption of that once we move out of level 4 and how that can be achieved. The Port has also prepared a list of shovel-ready projects that it is preparing to provide to central government alongside those being prepared by local government that it believes could contribute to the regional economic recovery. That looks like a very positive and promising contribution that the Port can also make by getting on with some capital projects that may have been further out on the horizon and bringing those forward.
James, when was that data going to be released, the financial data?
The trade data later this month and the financial data in May. I didn't get the precise dates.
Okay, any questions for James? Anyway, sorry, I missed you.
Yeah, kia ora tātou. Hey, I'm really reassured that the prosecution of the offence of discharge is taking its next steps. And James, could you indicate for us when we will receive a report on the situation and the next steps forward?
As it's before the courts, our intention would be to not brief you until the court process has been completed. That would be our normal course of events. Look, I'm happy to talk to the regulation team about a confidential briefing to councillors if that's what you're seeking at this point in time. Obviously, all of the facts of the incident are going to be laid out before the court. And we just don't want to jeopardise the court's consideration of those facts by providing any of that information to anybody outside of the prosecution team.
Rick?
Thank you, Chair. James, on the civil defence COVID-19, last week you gave us a report about the number of staff that the Regional Council had transferred to civil defence, 50-something from memory, which I found to be a staggering figure, actually. I also know that the Napier and Hastings councils have transferred staff across. I've had the privilege of interacting with a number of them, and I have to say the quality has been simply outstanding. What I'd like you to do, or make sure is done, is that this work that's been done is not undocumented. So I'd like to make sure that we've got in place processes whereby we're collecting up the number of hours, the value of the contribution that the regional councils made to civil defence, along with that with Hastings and Napier, so we can see the real value of what TAs and the councils have provided to protecting this community. I don't think people quite get it. And I'd like to do that. And then at the end of that, have a bit of a thought from you and the other chief executives as of how we have strengthened our civil defence capability in the region as a consequence of this event, and what more we could do to help improve things from the future, because I think we're all now much more mindful of how important this work is and how effective it is in protecting our communities. And I think people would be more of a mind to invest in this area because it's investment for the future. I also want to reflect that we would not be in the state we're in today if it were not for the decision of the council to take on the funding of civil defence for the whole of the region. It has been a really, really important decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, on the last point that you raised, was remarked to me yesterday that had the Regional Council itself not been in the position that it was to stand up the regional civil defence response in that initial phase, that we'd be in some trouble right now in terms of our ability to do that. So to the point that you've made about giving at a home within the Regional Council and funding it regionally, we certainly did ensure that we were in a position to hit the ground running on this and the results various tasks assigned to us from central government. We are keeping track of all the hours that staff are doing, both directly within the Civil Defence Group on secondment and also within HBRC in support of the COVID-19 response. I believe my colleagues in the other councils are doing the same, but I will double check that. and we are contemplating that there will be a full debriefing and review process at the end of this event, given that this event has been different to that which we have typically trained for and prepared for. And so there are some learnings, and there is also the possibility that that this situation, because of the international circumstances, does recur. And certainly, the best advice from the public health scientists on this is that we should expect future pandemics as well, and we do need to be well prepared for it. So look, it has been a great learning exercise. There has been a lot that we didn't anticipate, that we've had to learn on the way on this, and so we will complete a full picture on it in terms of also the resourcing burden on councils. And I'd also just like to say that we are giving active thought to how we recognise that contribution from our staff appropriately, and we will want to have a conversation with the joint committee of the mayors and chair of the councils to ensure that we do appropriately recognise that at the right time.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for James? We have these Ospri people coming in at 11 o'clock, and it's 5:02 now. So we should prepare ourselves for that. James, who is joining us from Ospri?
Yeah, I just got one.
Yeah, is that you, Charlie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just given the Prime Minister's interest in the Ruby Princess, is our Port Authority, or what role did the Port Authority have in allowing the Ruby Princess to park up in the bay?
So as I understand it, the port was in touch with the DHB in relation to that, and the DHB were managing that issue. Now, it does seem from the public reports there has been some level of dissatisfaction expressed by the Medical Officer of Health regarding the response that he got from the crew. So the Port Authority at that point in time was not managing the public health issues. That was very much in the hands of the DHB, and I think we would recognise that that obviously the outcome that arose from that was not a particularly desirable one, and so all did not go as well as it could, because obviously with the benefit of hindsight, it would have been preferable for nobody to have disembarked from that vessel. But as I say, that at the time that occurred was being managed between the shipping operator and the District Health Board, and the port was not actively involved in managing that public health risk.
Is there any learnings that the port could probably take from it? I mean, are they in contact with other ports?
Well, look, I do think that the whole cruise ship industry and its interaction with ports and with public health authorities will change as a result of this circumstance, and I would expect that in the future that there will be more stringent arrangements in relation to managing the potential public health risks from cruise ships entering New Zealand waters. But look, I'm happy to take that up with the port and see how the port community amongst themselves are contemplating this.
I think, Charlie, your point, there's just huge amounts of lessons that have taken, and that's one of the gaps that was left open. And James and I, we weren't aware of the cruise ship coming in, but every day was like exponential growth of the issues. But we did talk to the port about staff getting off the freighters that were picking up produce here. And the port made a decision about a day after that cruise ship had been here, or maybe 2 days, that they wouldn't allow anyone off the ships. So when that ship arrived, it said it didn't have anyone affected. But in hindsight, we would block our borders a lot faster. And the government, our port made a decision before the government made a decision on the normal freight lanes. They were trying to be as proactive as they could, but as a nation, I guess, we all left, in a community, we all left little gaps, and my crikey, we'll never do it again.
Thank you.
Rick, were you wanting to say something? And then Neil?
You're on mute, Rick. Mute.
thank you. Yes to Charlie. We're all going to learn from this and learn some big lessons. Yeah, but there are humanitarian issues in this as well. We don't want to get ourselves in a position like the Florida got, where they had a cruise ship full of people who were ill, and it wouldn't let them dock. So we were then exposing many more people. They finally found an answer. Now, but it takes a while. I'm sure if this pandemic, another pandemic comes, we will have much better processes and thinking in place because countries had to make this up as they went.
Yeah.
And they made some terrible mistakes. For example, in Japan, where they locked a cruise ship up off the coast and made sure everyone got sick. So we've got to think about these things. So yes, you're right to point the finger at the issue. Yes, everybody learn a lot from this. No question about that.
Neil?
And I've learned the lesson. I'm never going on a cruise ever. Never.
Neil?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. The point I probably want to make, James, and I look forward to ultimately the review. We've got too much to do at the moment to review, but if you like, in terms of taking notes on the way through, one of the things that I was interested in the early days was the relationship with the DHB and civil defence, what that connection looks like, and our ability to support the DHB in their activities. But so I think one of the learnings that I've seen is the connections that we need to shore up in terms of planning, etc., between agencies to make sure we're quicker out of the blocks. But these are all things you learn on the way through.
Thank you, Neil. We won't have any comment to that because it's time for the Ospri meeting. And I see that we've been joined by one, have we? Already?
Fenton Wilson on the line?
Yes. Who's on the line? Who's joining us?
Morning.
How are you, mate?
Yeah, no, good. Thanks. How are you?
You're looking very good. Look like you've got the Graham tartan tie on.
No, I've got the Smedley Station tartan tie on.
Well, welcome to the Ospri team.
Kevin Cruz from Head of Disease Management of Ospri.
Yeah, welcome, Kevin.
Thank you.
Are we joined by anyone else? Just you and Fenton?
Steve Stewart, our Chief Executive, will join very, very soon.
Okay. Okay. Well, do you want to lead off, Kevin? Or Fenton? Who's going to lead off from Ospri?
I can start, Chair, just quickly. So we're waiting for Steve, our CE, but you were sent a PowerPoint, I think, of history of the TB program in New Zealand and
there it is, mate.
Subsequent. Good man, thank you. And subsequent to that, the response in the Tipahui, which has been challenging to say the least. And you tie it in with the drought, low stock prices, lack of sales as it is now. It's been a very challenging time for people in the world. But the disease management stuff, Chair, is probably better explained by, I guess we'll hand over to him.
Okay, well, Steve was going to give a bit of an intro, so in his absence, I'll start off if that's okay. So what we'd like to do is, given the thank you for the time available that you've made for us, if I can just perhaps take it as read. I think half of the presentation you've been sent is about background history of the TB program in New Zealand over several decades and to the point we're at now. Yeah, the latter part of the presentation is about the Hawke's Bay TB outbreak and what we're doing about it. So I'll if you'd like me to go through that, I'm happy to do that. Or if you would prefer.
I don't think it's necessary, Kevin. I think everyone would have read it, but I'm sure lots of people have got questions on it. And we're starting off with Craig. I mean, I just think it was a really good report. You know, we're obviously concerned about the issue because it's just another thing that it's hitting our farmers at the moment. Like they're getting hit by perfect storms all over the place. We know you guys doing your best. but this is and this is seriously affecting a huge amount of our region. So, Craig, we'll start with you with questions.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks very much, guys, and thanks for the presentation. It's great giving a bit of a background and history to Ospri. I've been very aware of this issue for quite some time, actually, in my various roles. And the bit I'm really concerned about is, from your perspective, your engagement with Hawke's Bay Regional Council as this started to roll, awareness became, etc. This is not about pointing fingers or anything like that. It's just about looking for assurances that the channels of communication and the acknowledgement of who's doing what and who has responsibility for what between yourselves and the regional council is good and as robust as possible, etc. And I see in your, I think it's your paper, you talk about, there was learnings, etc., blah, blah. That's all very nice, but we learn every day. This is as you point out, this is a serious issue in our region, of which depends on land-based industries. And Fenton, your points there are absolutely right, as well as I think you missed Bovis, that just things in the rural community, our bedrock, hitting hard, of course, with the drought. So if you could just really articulate that from a ratepayer's point of view, all things about biosecurity, i.e. tuberculosis across Hawke's Bay being managed in the best way possible with the resources that you have, and is there something else we need to be doing and doing fast? Thanks.
Steve, welcome. Do you want to do that?
Thank you. Just some technology problems. I'm sorry, I'm just a couple of minutes late, but I did hear that question from Craig Fossen. If you like to, I can try and answer that if you like. So look, I mean, I think it's a really good point. So I've been in the job a year now, and when we got into the Hawke's Bay situation, it was clear we didn't have those connections the way we should have had. If you think about vector operations, pest operations, we're not the only game in town. Regional councils are, and other players are as well. I've just released a review of the organisation, which actually seeks to build and put those relationships back in place, which I think we've lost over the years. And in doing that, we're setting up a regional manager and increasing our resources into the regions, including Hawke's Bay, so we can actually build on those relationships. Regional councils are important, district councils are important, and what else is important too is the amount of forest owners in the region and the role that they play in pest operations as well. And so, in answer to your question, I don't think it was optimised, and we're going to work really hard to make sure we do optimise in the future by the changes that we're putting in place.
Does that answer your question, Craig? Where are you?
Oh yes, for the moment I'll come back though, because not fully no, but let others have a question first.
Michelle, do you have your hand up, or was that just leaning on the computer? You do have your hand up? Yeah. Well, you're on, mate. You're on. Thank you.
Kia ora, Steve. So I'm just looking at the areas there. Couple of questions. So Matahorua, very close to the Mohaka Forestry, but I noticed they're not impacted. But Tūtera at Waipataki, isn't that including some of the regional council lands there with Mangahararu Tangitu?
Yes.
It's only because I walked up around there. I went into the areas where they had the trees with scion up the top of there at what's it called, Paunui, and you. It's just observation. You use 1080, and Mohaka Forestry use land trapping, and yet the infections in the areas that use 1080. So it's just pointing, and with the snow pest control continuing, how is that going to impact? Is that going to move into? Because I'm coming from the Wairoa area. Is that going to move into our areas? If 1080 is supposed to be the thing to get rid of possums, why is there that the TB outbreak in that area? I'm just, and some of that land's owned by the regional council, so it's a bit of a worry.
So perhaps I'll just hand over to Kevin Cruz, who's our head of disease management, that's managing the program in the Hawke's Bay. Kevin.
So if people are able to, if you look at the presentation we sent you, and it is it's the slide 16, which is the 3 colours, and if you like, the lilac area, I think is exactly what Michelle, or part of what Michelle has been talking about, is the area that were areas that were previously declared free, and there were areas that were meant to transition into the regional council program. I think as Steve said, that for a variety of reasons, that relationship that we used to have with the follow-on program, which was quite tight, probably up to about 3 years ago, for a variety of reasons, that has been less so, and that probably several parties have probably taken their eye off the ball. And so I personally, it's an interesting observation Michelle makes. The key thing about controlling the TB and possums in those areas is not necessarily about the tool you use, it's about getting the possum populations down to a level at which the TB can't persist or can't spread into. I think, yeah, as I said, I think it's more to do with the continuity of our program and your program than necessarily the tools that are used, if that's okay.
Does that answer you, Michelle? Jareth? Oh.
Okay, yeah. Just looking at your report and slide 15 in particular, and it's quite disconcerting that in mid-1990s and early 2000s, there was the same area that has this outbreak that we see now where it originated from. Shouldn't we have learned something from history? And what are you putting in place to make sure that won't occur again? So obviously we have got a hotspot there. And I have spoken to farmers in that particular region who were quite critical of some of the coverage in those particular areas over the time when it was deemed TB free. Thank you.
Yeah, Jeff, so, you know, like you, I was concerned that that this outbreak occurred, really concerned this outbreak occurred, and particularly so when we realised that there has actually been previous history in the area. So we did get the whole area and our approach to it independently reviewed, and internally reviewed, and then externally independently reviewed. And I'll let Kevin take you through those learnings, because those learnings are real and will result in us taking different courses of action this time round. So Kev, could you just explain what the review found?
Yeah. So So yeah, not muted. So what we found, and it's exactly the observations that yourselves councillors have made, is again looking at the map on page 16. Said our tactics have been over the last probably decade in Hawke's Bay is rolling back the infected possum area from the coast back up into the green area, which is our buffer zone. What the observations have been for our internal and external review about why this outbreak has happened is that we didn't cast, if you like, a wide enough lens over the wider area, and not just the areas in the lilac area that are rolling back, but the integrity of, if you like, our buffer zone to protect those areas, but also casting a wider lens in time, looking back at history. And as I said, everyone is wise after the event, but those red circles are showing areas of particular weakness in our buffer zone, which from observations from previous people that were involved were areas that basically things spilled over in the early 2000s as well. So what we're doing is again, we are learning from that. And once a lot of our advanced pest program was targeting those areas, as well as hitting the areas in the lilac area where disease had spilled out into. and then looking at strengthening the buffer zone, particularly focusing on those areas. The middle ring, for those that you will sort of know it, is the area of the Mohaka Loop, which is about midway along the Waitara Valley, which essentially the, if you like, our buffer zone in that area from the orange area into the buffer zone is probably only about 100 metres wide. So it's a distinct area of weakness that we need to focus on. And the other area is the lower pass, about 3/4 of the way along the Waitara Valley going northeast, which travels over into the, I guess, the Opawahi boundary stream, Waikawa area. So those are areas that have been targeted, and once the PEST program gets back on track after the level 4 lockdown, those are the areas where the emphasis will be put into.
Thank you. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The irony of what we are currently going through with the COVID-19 and the TB the similarities between the two kind of stand out to me, and where we are trying to control a particular virus at this time, one being in the human population and one being in our cattle population, and the way that they're spread. I think the thing that stands out for me between the both of them is that the need to come together in order to actually control and eliminate the various viruses. And I think what I've taken out of this report, looking back into the history, is up until three years ago, we had a very good, strong working relationship with Ospri Regional Council and the various players. For some reason, that kind of broke down a little bit, became frayed, which allowed the virus to creep back into, start to rear its head back up again into the Hawke's Bay. In order to overcome this, we need to be able to get back to working together to start to put those limitations and controls back on TB and starting to eliminate it out of our herds. That's one stage, but it will be the ongoing maintenance, which is equally as important as trying to get control of the TB virus at this stage. And so for me, I think we're starting down the right pathway, but it's ensuring that we learn the lessons from our COVID-19 current experience that we are going through, and understanding that we actually need to work together to actually not only eliminate it, but to maintain that it doesn't come back into our environment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point I wanted to raise.
Thank you, Mike. Craig? Craig, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do. So I think there's a couple.
Does anyone else have their hand up? I'm just
so the point being, someone mentioned before about the report we have about tuberculosis, etc. So obviously you have the main vector here is possums. So obviously you have data on the possum count, or you're trapping residual after over X years. So be really interesting for you to be able to share the headlines of that with us. We'll just send them through, not necessarily this meeting, given time. But also, again, my summation here, and please don't take it the wrong way, it comes from a positive way, but everything I hear reads like a breakdown in the relationship between yourselves and HBRC, who both have looking to deal with tuberculosis in the best way possible, but there's some zigging and zagging going on. Something's happening here. And so what advice do you have from your perspective that we can, as councillors, gain confidence that that has been addressed, and that relationship, which mission is to lower the possum population across Hawke's Bay, obviously including your area, is happening? Because I'm not hearing or getting that confidence at the moment. I'm getting confidence about learning and acknowledging of some issues, etc. Don't want to go over those. I just need that starting point now. So in another month or so, let's hopefully say we're out of this scenario, Hawke's Bay people can have confidence that all agencies, regardless of their name, are talking, communicating, sharing, collaborating to deal with the issue that they're charged to deal with, i.e. lowering the risk of tuberculosis and therefore possums.
Steve, as the CEO, I think you should just, you're on mute, mate.
I'm not normally on mute. Hey, look, absolutely. So I think that process has already started. You know, when this outbreak occurred, and we have TB committees, and we have members of district and regional councils occasionally attend those committees, but it was in a ad hoc and informalised way, and so the process that we're going through now is that very much trying to embed those relationships and attendance at various meetings, so we're connecting up. I mean, for one, I mean, I wasn't even aware of the work that was going on in this area by various councils until I got to one of those meetings and people started telling me about it. And so there has been a disconnect, there's no doubt about it, but the conversations we're having with councils now is exactly what you're saying, Craig, is that everyone is saying, gee, we've let this slip, this is not good enough, we have to get this back on track, and that's exactly what we intend to do and have started doing.
Thank you. Gerard?
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, what you're just saying, and I think it's very important that we together, all the stakeholders in this, make this very clear to those who are being affected by this. This is awful. You know, when I stepped into this as a councillor and came aware of the issue that these farmers have to deal with, we need to show some heart, but also we need to be honest about what has occurred, where we actually have dropped the ball, and we need to be honest about this and brave, and actually also give the solutions, and that the solutions possibly also will include our farming community, but also our forestry community and all those who actually own land in that particular area that maybe don't have a forestry or a farming background or economic drive. They need to become part of this as well. So what we need to take from this needs to actually be clearly articulated to those affected by it. It's nothing less than that we owe them.
Yeah, and I mean, if I may Chair, yeah, we have been communicating individually with the affected and impacted farmers, and we have individual case managers working with the most infected farms. But I think it's important to note that we're going to be here in this region with intensive ground and aerial operations for the next 6 years to rid this region of its TB, and so farmers can get out of underneath the shadow of TB. So we've got 6 years of work here. We've got funding for 6 years of work to work and get the TB out of the area, and so those relationships and working with farmers is going to be we're going to have to get into a cadence and a rhythm because we're going to be with them and working alongside them and the communities for a long time to come yet.
Thank you, Michelle, and then to you, Mike.
Thanks, Rex. Just another question there, Steve. What are the RTCs, your residual catch and your monitoring are giving you a bit of an indication that you know things aren't looking too good, or is that all mishmash too? Because Regional Council is doing some of the pest control and Ospri is doing monitoring some of it. Is it all is the whole region? Do you keep an eye on the monitoring and the numbers?
Yeah, yeah. So Kevin will correct me if I'm wrong. So I mean we were, but 2 or 3 years ago, as part of our planning, we stopped some of the monitoring and operations in the Hawke's Bay. We thought it was safe. It had been cleared. It was cleared to about 95 to 97% probability. But what the review showed was that yes, that was true, but in the future, and this is where a model will change, we need to take more account of the surrounding landscape because the threat of breakdown is obviously greater when the surrounding landscape has been uncontrolled. And in this case, it was uncontrolled, and it took that period of time for the essentially the vectors to work through the breaches in the buffer zone and into the herds. And so we have to go back and fix that, and that's why we're going to be there for a long time. And obviously when we are in the area, then we have intensive monitoring.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Mike, and then to you, Fenton.
Thank you, Steve. Chairman Steve.
Fenton.
Mike.
Steve, just in regards to, so we've seen an interest in carbon credits, which is leading to more forestry being established. Two questions for me. What do you think the impact is going to be in regards to ongoing monitoring and control of TB, given the increased interest in forestry? More importantly, I'm looking at here as to who funds it, the levies that are charged, and who I don't see here is forestry. And that's where possums live.
So that's interesting that you should say that, Mike, because in the 3 Hawke's Bay meetings that I attended with farmers during this outbreak, the issue of forestry was one of the most hotly debated topics of conversation. In 2 ways. One is the proliferation of forests and the harbouring nature of forests for the vector, but also when they start felling, and a belief that that causes the possums to migrate into other areas. We have at one of the meetings we actually got PAMPAC to come along and their regional manager to talk around, or to be part of a conversation around what they're doing about it. And we realise that they do pest operations, but it's in a different context. It's kind of much more when they're sort of the trees are young and in a different way. But I think the point you're making is they need to be around the table as well, because they are part of both the problem and the solution. And we've got an agreement that we will be working together and sharing that information in the future, so we can have a holistic approach to the area, not just an ad hoc approach. And as I say, forestry is a huge part of that. So they are part of the problem and the solution.
Will that extend to seeking levies from forestry?
We haven't gone there yet. We haven't opened that conversation yet with them.
Given the fact that they are the ones who are harbouring the actual possums at the end of the day, they're the ones harbouring the possums.
Yeah, and
this, we are levying the actual herd owner.
Yeah, there's no ability for us to, under current arrangements, to levy foresters. It's just the same as there's no ability for us to necessarily levy some of the country up the back of Tartrakina and that might be in various trusts and that.
The lobby government?
Which also harbours. But yeah, so there'd have to be a regulatory and legal change if that was to occur.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fenton, and then back to you, James.
Kia ora, Mike. Wise words, Matua, as always. Talking about the relationship COVID and TB outbreak, very similar challenges. One of the key issues here, I think, Chair, is there's a range of different outcomes that different entities are after. And, if you go back to 2016, our whole model changed because we were down to 2 or 3 infected herds in the whole North Island. In fact, the North Island was clear of infection for quite a period of time. This is the first breakdown out of 175 proof of freedom declared areas. And I think that's worth dwelling on, because, coupled with a new regime, a new way of doing things, the regional councils, i.e. the ratepayers, stopped contributing funding about that time. And the relationships have, through no fault of anyone's, really just drifted apart. And it takes something like this outbreak in Te Puhui, and I agree with Sheriff, 3 times, come on, what's happening here? But it's because a whole range of different entities are trying to get different goals out of their control. And I think going forward, and the thing I'm hoping to hear our Chief Executive say is that the regional councils of the country, because let's face it, we're a nationwide entity, that relationship needs to be shored up again and pronto. So just to sum that up, we're throwing a whole lot of resource into this area at the moment, including Tartrakina and other blocks. Kia ora, Michelle, I hear what you're saying. But, it's not all about 1080. It's about a range of interventions and we can't do it all, and frankly, we'd bankrupt ourselves. So we need a across the country, and I'm talking about a nationwide approach. And I'm a big believer in the 2050 approach for predator-free New Zealand, because, you know, big, hairy goal and everyone throws their hands up in the air and says it's impossible. But unless we're keeping a big goal like that driving us, once we get down to 2 or 3, 5 herds left infected in the country, everyone's going to take, as to Jeff put it, their eye off the ball again. I mean, the herds in the Waitara Valley have been clear for 10 plus years. So, you know, the possum control, the farmers have sort of forgotten what it was like, and but they haven't forgotten now. Anyway, thanks, Chair.
I do want to bring this to a close because we're a tight schedule. James, and then Neil wants to come on. Unless anyone's really desperate, I think everyone's had a good fair go at this. So we'll finish with you, Neil. James?
Well, thank you, Chair. And my question was at least possibly in part being answered by Fenton, and maybe this is one for Steve. Look, I recognise that our two organisations can and should work more closely together. And I think in recent months, since this situation has arisen, we have been working more closely together, and recognise those misalignments or gaps in the national framework that the regional sector as a whole needs to work through with Ospri and MPI to ensure that we've got a coherent system that works. Listening to this discussion earlier on, notwithstanding that, you know, that historic lack of close collaboration in recent years, I might have got the impression, and other people listening on might have got the impression, that the cause of this current outbreak has been a breakdown or a lack of close cooperation between our two organisations. I wasn't aware that that was the case. If it is the case, I wouldn't mind just understanding how that contributed to the situation we're now in, but do acknowledge that how we go forward is going to be a function of our close collaboration. So if I've got that wrong, or anyone else might have got the wrong impression, let us know. But if that is the right impression, just a little explanation about that would be helpful.
Yeah, thanks, James. I wouldn't characterise it like that. That is in any way the regional council was the cause of this. This is, you know, this has been something that has been brewing through the breach for a long time. I think one of the contributing issues, I think, was the fact that had we been closer to the council, and had we been sharing information around that sort of information that you were receiving from your end and some of your operations were receiving, we might have had a bit more of an early warning that things were deteriorating to the point that they were. I think that might have been, you know, one of the contributing factors. That misalignment meant that we didn't have good access to that information, and probably took our eyes off the ball, and there in front of us was potentially a useful source of kind of intelligence that we could have acknowledged and perhaps made a different decision. But in no way do I ever, you know, have in any forum pointed the finger at any council, or for any council for being the contributing cause to this.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. I think he was more referring to the relationship breakdown, not in any particular side, but nevertheless. Neil, can you wind us up here? Or not wind us up, I'm going to wind us up. You're going to speak once you get off your thing.
Sure. Following on essentially from James's point, I'm interested to know, and perhaps Fenton might be able to help. We've got the PCA monitoring data, and I'm wanting to know whether we stopped monitoring, or we were monitoring and haven't reported. What's happened to that information? Where does it go? And why is it that we weren't in a position to be alerted earlier?
So either Kevin or Ian might be able to answer that.
Who's going to answer?
Kev, can you answer that?
Yeah, certainly, and again, it's I go back to the lilac area on the map. That was the area of, if you like, transition, and I think, as Steve said, and I think it's more to do that maybe not people aren't collecting stuff. It's the fact that we haven't been liaising with you. It will be good, I guess, once the dust settles, and we do enter into a new sort of framework to actually see what it is that you guys have been collecting. Certainly the observations that we've had when we've put people into those areas on that sort of green lilac boundary is the large possum densities. that have been
It wasn't
seen.
so much the Ospri data, it was more what the regional council's data looked like, PCA-wise.
So, perhaps, Chair, I can jump in there. So, look, yeah, we have been running our PCA program for a long time, close to 800,000 hectares under a PCA program. There were no indications in the PCA data that there was an issue here, particularly notwithstanding that a breach has occurred. I think the point is that Steve has made that is absolutely on the money, is that the working relationship between the two agencies and the sharing of data may well have revealed a pattern that one set of data on its own didn't. So I think going forward, and look, Steve and the team are well connected to our team now, going forward, a model that sees us collaborating and sharing that data will probably reveal earlier opportunities to intervene in the future, but nothing in our PCA data to date on its own was indicating there was an emerging issue.
Thank you, Ian. I'm going to wind it up now because we've got a lot of stuff to get through. Thank you very much to the Ospri guys. Fenton, it was really good to see you back here. Really appreciate that. And Kevin, good to meet you, and thanks for your contribution. Steve, where are you? That's very refreshing when people are as frank as you were today. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate you turning up. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Now, it is, the sheet says something, but we're not going to do that. I want to take this opportunity to go around the table and do a quick report from people of, and try and keep it to less than 5 minutes because we'll break at 12 o'clock for lunch, and we'll come back and do public excluded afterwards. But I would like to go around the table and just get a bit of an update from everybody, how they're getting on and their particular interest. Start, Mike, I can see you at the top.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I suppose on a personal basis, keeping healthy, getting out, trying to walk each day, with regards to the various hats I'm wearing. From Taiwhenua Heretaunga's point of view, we're operating essential services, servicing our whānau, and it's a number of services. Also, we have a GP clinic established with the organisation, which is doing the COVID-19 swabs, which is an interesting space. And it's been extremely interesting watching the growth of that RIC over the last almost coming here, it is 2 weeks now. Starting off from receiving 2 test kits when we first got the CBAC testing station established, to the other day when we received 60. So just seeing how that's grown over the last couple of weeks, and how as a country we're dealing with the whole outbreak, testing, isolation, etc., etc. Then we get down to the welfare side of it. We saw Ngāti Kahungunu do a Kaiho Kai program, which this week saw fish caught using a customary fishing permit. That required cooperation from coastal hapu, from Ahuriri right through to Poranga Hau. So seeing our coastal collectives come together, working collaboratively to make sure that that custom permit was able to be actioned was fantastic. Quite high expectations from everybody around being able to receive something from out of that catch. But at the end of the day, I think Nahiwi publicised that quite well. It was about need rather than want. And I think generally within the Māori community, there's been a lot of fear. So we've heard from our northern border, especially around Mahia, people coming into the area from our southern region, making sure that they don't feel as though they're being left out through the various COVID welfare programs that are taking place. From our central location, There is some concern in Flaxmere, I suppose, about the number of outside residents coming back into Flaxmere wishing to holiday at the holiday resorts, holiday residences during this time. But other than that, I think overall our general Māori population is healthy, but also concerned and anxious. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike, and we appreciate your role as chair of the Taiwhenua as well. It's a big, and they're very active in this. So thanks for the efforts you're making, Michelle.
Kia ora, I don't have too much more to add. I've got to re-engage with the Wairo Collective, but I've just been keeping a sort of finger on the pulse of how our community's feeling, and yeah, a little bit of anxiety and fear, but generally everybody's following the rules, and I also see the Tūhoe whanaunga, they've also got their road check in place in collaboration with the police. And I think the new law with the police having the road checks will help ease that anxiety a little. But yeah, the thank you to the iwi for the fish, and yes, it was sought after. One thing I have discovered though, everybody was putting this together on the run, and I've found a bit of a nest of our kaumātua who weren't. We thought they were getting looked after and they weren't. So it's about sort of putting that message out again to make sure that they're okay, because they can't go to the supermarket. They can't go to a lot of places. So yeah, we've just been wrapping some services around them and support. So kia ora.
Thank you, Michelle. Api?
Okay. Oh, where's my... Can you hear me all right, Mr. Chair?
You can.
Am I coming through?
You are.
Excellent. I've got nothing more to add to what Mike and Michelle have already added. I would like to say and acknowledge the efforts of our civil defence coordinators across our LTAs, and particularly the work that's been coordinated from HBRC. It's been probably beneficial from a Wairoa perspective to see more formal communication networks happening through this period. Historically, during major civil defence events such as floods and earthquakes, etc., our Māori communities have always been there in the background to support the communities. And this particular opportunity is building more robust relationships, more formal communication lines, so that as we move out of this COVID environment and into a recovery phase, we should be in a really good position to have strong, enhanced communication. So out of that, the only news I'm hearing from Wairoa is they are managing to keep on top of the demand at the moment. The biggest concern is transient people coming in and out of the region. But outside of that, I've been wholly impressed by the comms that have been coming out of our emergency centres, consistent messaging to our LTAs, and it's been very useful at the gumboot end of this response to have that range of information and resources available to share amongst our communities. So to all of our coordinators and to all our emergency staff particularly, thank you very much for your diligent work, and keep up the fantastic effort. Kia ora.
Thank you, Api. That was excellent. Will?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't really have anything.
You got a drought, mate.
Ed. Still no significant rain since last meeting. The CHB community have done a video message to Sulfian Farms Takapau, and that's apparently been very well received and given them a bit of a lift in spirits there. With regards to Hawkesbury Rural Advisory Group, I've been appointed on the feed team, and yeah, that's a real struggle with regards to trying to help facilitate with feed supplies to farmers that are in need. There's just simply not a lot of feed left out there, simply because the drought's been so widespread in both islands, and now the restrictions with the lockdown, freight is becoming quite an issue where there just isn't the backloads, and so the cost to that can almost make it prohibitive. So yeah, nothing really changed, and still looking for a decent rain on the horizon.
Thank you. Well, we're very aware of the immense struggles your region is having. Craig, what have you been doing with yourself, mate?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm salivating at the thought of fresh fish. I can't. There's not much coming down my drive for one reason or another. I don't know what that is.
You've got to talk to that partner at my Marama.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, our families are well. We've got a bit of cabin fever like everybody else. We're very lucky and blessed to be in the out at Waimarama, so we can. There's a little bit more space than there is for some of our families and friends in town. I'd probably one highlight. I just really like to acknowledge how almost everyone I'm talking to in this role and outside of it are actually. We've gone through the realization how serious this issue is, but actually the courage or the lateral thinking everyone's doing, exploring what will the day after look like. And there are no straight lines, we all know that, but just heads coming together, various solutions across our region and down in Wellington, to be fair, looking for ways to get us back to some kind of normality, whatever that might be afterwards. And I'm really enjoying being part of that space. And hopefully all of Hawke's Bay will look back on this period after a couple of years and go, gee, we actually, it was tough, but we made some big steps and moves forward for our region at that time. I'm really enjoying being part of that. Thank you. And also acknowledge Rick's leadership at CDM. We're very lucky to have him and his experience and the way he's corralled the team, and totally endorse what he said earlier about the advantage, if you like, that our region has having coming together under that CDM umbrella, because it was a bit ropey at the time, but hey, look how it's played out. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyway?
Kia ora. You know, things are going well at home with the tamariki. They're actually loving it and don't want to go back to school. So looks like we might be having a bit more whānau time, and so we're doing really well. I've been involved a bit with Te Puni Kōkiri in a marketing campaign, especially around papakainga living. So that's taken up a bit of my time. But in terms of tourism, just a bit of feedback post our Friday board meeting. And I'm aware that Councillor Foss has communicated to our councillors around the resolution that we made, that we'll be offering a membership holiday for our tourism members. So our local small businesses can have a bit of a break on the strain that they're going through. And what we've discussed really is still in a response phase for our industry. And we got back survey results that were sent, the survey was sent out last week to our membership. And the main points there were that they'd like support on the financial guarantee scheme, any future government packages, as well as long-term marketing support for our members in the industry. So that was a good indicator around where the needs are within the industry and how we can further support them. So at the moment, at Hawke's Bay Tourism, alongside Business Hawke's Bay, the Business Hub, are developing workshops that coincide with that support needed. We also have our Hawke's Bay team working on the event planning and coordination, particularly for when we come out of alert level 4, what sort of domestic spend do we want in the region? What does that look like? And planning and coordinating the events to be able to bring the spend to Hawke's Bay. And we're really lucky that we have a strong branding product, and that we're able to look forward in terms of repair and recovery for the next 12 months. Beyond that, we're not sure how international travel will look, possibly between 12 to 18 months until we look at any type of international marketing for the region. But all in all, I think that helps cover Api's question from last week around where we're at in terms of response, repair and recovery looking forward. And also back to Mike's question last week around Airbnb and how some are trying to transition into rentals. In terms of how that helps with the housing shortage, it doesn't help very much, because we're looking at these type of rentals being 700 odd a week with a short lease time of possibly a month or two, because we have our Airbnbs looking at what's going to happen over time, so they're only allowing that short lease time available. So that doesn't help with our housing shortage, really. So all in all, I think I've covered as much as I can remember from our meeting. Craig, if you want to join in, please do, but that's my update.
Sad as go. He focused on fish in Waimarama. Martin?
Sorry. Yeah, did you call on me then, Mr. Chairman?
I did.
Yeah, thank you. Look, just on a personal note, I celebrated my parents' 62nd wedding anniversary last night with a bubble toast, and it was great to be able to do that. So that's quite a milestone, I guess. In terms of the work that I've been doing, the priority has been some discussions around water security, working with the water security governance group that we established back in February and March. It's got obvious provenance at the moment, and we'll be talking a bit about some of the outputs of that later. Transportation, we are still, working in the context of preparing next year's regional transport plan. We've got a workshop involving the experts that we've retained, who we're going to present to us on 27 March, looking at convening that virtually later in April, so that we can get some innovative blue skies thinking into aligning our transport plan with the the central government's policy statement on transport priorities, which are very much climate change, public transport, better overall mobility around our region, aligning with that. And I guess the third thing is I just want to remind the councillors of the priority on climate change response. We did establish a working group on that as well, which did meet. A paper has been prepared as to the outputs of that meeting, but the staff involved have been diverted into the civil defence welfare response. But I would like that to come back on to an agenda item in the next 2 or 3 weeks, if we can, to report back from where that governance discussion, or the discussion with the working group, got to. If we could just perhaps schedule some time for that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Martin. Neil? Neil, I think Rick is sabotaging you there.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll just confine
Not true.
comment.
I'm not sabotaging him. It's all self-inflicted by Neil. Let me tell you that.
Just on, there's two matters really. I thought I'd confine discussion to. Firstly, we're in a substantial reset internally within council in terms of our financial outlooks and reshaping both our annual and long-term plans. And really the work done by Jess to date has been outstanding, and pulling that together. It's just on a bit of a pause at the moment, given her own personal circumstances. So it just highlights to me the dependence we have on our senior team, and it's unfortunate that we've had a change of staff in Jess's team, which sort of adds complexity. But we will be turning our minds to all the factors that come to play in a reset of our entire operation, really, in the next few weeks. The other thing is more on a work front for me is, if you like, and just sharing with you as the matters that arise and the issues that arise on the shop floor in lockdown. We're an organisation that has over 500 staff. We've got nearly 200 people with complex needs and being under lockdown, And I assure you that's not an easy scenario to be in. It's we've got a daily war room going, trying to work that. And on top of that, we've had a positive COVID incident, so that adds even greater complexity to that conundrum. And I certainly feel for those other groups, Mary Doyle and other Gladys Mary, the rest homes that have been affected as well. So we have major issues operationally for essential services and services such as ourselves. Complexity gets added because we've got something like 30 odd foreign nationals with us, trying to get those transited to out of the country. So that causes great stress as well, particularly when those young people, 17, 18-year-olds, want to party all night and break protocols. So that adds to that equation. But also their networks are such that we end up being the go-to place for just about every other nationality out there in terms of backpackers and the like. So we're dealing with the League of Nations at the moment, trying to manage a group of people that have sort of at a lost end, waiting for their departure. So that, Mr. Chair, is a snapshot of the last week or two. But as Craig's mentioned, our substantial challenge will be around what our economic exit strategy looks like, and we'll be working on that in the next short while.
Thank you, Neil, and thanks for. I meant to ask you to update us on HODEPA, because very conscious that you have a very complex role to play out there. So thanks for updating us on that, Jareth.
Okay, a couple of points. First of all, from an industry perspective on the Heretaunga Plains, we're now 72% through our harvest, and I'll tell you a story one day as a council about the concept of the harvest miracle, and it is happening. The dry weather is definitely helping. The not so cold nights are helping, so productivity is staying up. And we're about 18% through our export packaging, packing and sending. So that's going relatively well. However, there are some concerns, and Rick has been involved, and we've actually made the industry aware that we actually have had some of our workers not behaving the way they should have been behaving. I actually don't put the blame on the workers. I actually put the blame on the employers who need to take pastoral care responsibilities. And we actually, as myself, as National Coordinator for Seasonal Labour, as well as Apples and Pears, we've actually taken a very strong stance, and that if it would occur again, the employer in question will actually be asked to stop his essential activity, which you can imagine is very serious. But how serious it is that we put the whole industry at risk if we're not careful. So that's been worked on, and I think that within 10 minutes, when the messages were sent to our members, 60% of the messages were opened and read, and they would have been taken notice of. And we're already seeing change behaviour right now. Also involved in produce that is excess, and we have been able to give produce to one of the maraes close by, and also now we're actually supporting Ngāti Kananunu, and we've set up a collection point, and twice a week we will be providing them with our access, not to the point that they're overburdened, but actually this is actually planned of what their requirements are, and we're trying to tailor that at the same time. And that actually is working really well. And the last thing I've been working on is thinking of what it actually will look like after the drought, because at times we have short memories, but I think we really have an opportunity to help with making our region more drought resilient. And one of that is actually articulated stock water. And the people that I've been talking to in beef and lamb and consultants, farm consultants, they're actually really ecstatic that we as a council are looking to assist and help and support wherever we can to make this a strategy for the entire Hawke's Bay region. That's me.
Thank you, Jareth. Charlie?
Yeah, kia ora tātou. Well, just for your information, my bubble here in Sunny Moakan consists of 15 people. We've got 6 and 9 kids. That's why we're all in a car each. Whenever we have a meeting, we just grab a vehicle and jump in there. It becomes the office because there's got a big playground over the back of the other house, with a huge big trampoline. So most of the kids normally congregate around there. Other than that, they're causing mayhem around the paddocks. So, just looking at the list of what we've been doing so far, I think hopefully once we come out of this lockdown alert level 4, I'm pretty interested to follow your path through our Rex as far as getting on with those projects again. I think it's a good idea to try and get as much of those jobs, bring them forward that that will give people employment over the next few months or whatever. Take up some of that unemployment gap. I'm still a bit concerned about the TV vector control over on the Maunga Haru. That seems, I don't know if this COVID might be overshadowing the importance of trying to cut that back. That's 12 herds infected and 10 to be tested. It's quite a lot of animals, especially in that small area around Maunga Haru, when you realise that there's an inland boundary stream as an inland island, so they're trapping okay. It's like the Mohaka is a big boundary, so if they're coming across from Tata to Kina, they need to put a rapid across the bridge, across the Mohaka up there, because otherwise the Mohaka is a big boundary, and we're just going to keep them all in that one area. Yeah, so I think I wouldn't mind sort of keeping an eye on that in the future. We still take rates off everybody for pest control, so we definitely got a responsibility there and on how we use it, doing that. So as far as the lockdown itself is concerned, I think everyone's behaving themselves around here. I'm pretty mindful of what's happening with the minister and his mates, so I'm definitely staying put. I did go down to the beach, but it's for an essential service to go and get me some firewood. Well, I'm staying away from the fishing. I know that's a no-no, so. But if someone else was fishing while I'm down there, I'm sure they'll give me some.
Thank you, Charlie.
So yeah, that's about me. I'm keen to get on with those local projects again with the Wairau Horticulture Project and your regional council one, and actually keeping in track on the team that's in Wairau. As you're saying, it's good to see Nathan's bringing the incident controller there. I'm going to check out those roads out to Mar here since he lives out there. You should keep an eye on it. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
And Charlie, just before you go, is there any update on the DHB that you wish to tell us, or it's the same as?
None that you don't already know. Obviously, the equipment or the personal protection clothing is out there. They've started appointing a specific person in each locality, or in each job employment sector. Although Wairau becomes its own locality, so all the GPs and midwives have their own collection person, Tutra Health, a lot of the other people around Flaxby and so forth. But Wairau as itself has just got one person in charge or contactable for ordering on behalf of everybody else. So that and that started yesterday. So hopefully that seems to be working okay. The Tiahe Modi Order project, or the other project which gets the community hubs going, Taifina was doing a really good job up this way. My partner Vilma, she's actively involved in dishing out to our elderly along the Mohaka Valley and on the way into Wairau. Her and the daughter-in-law keeps them busy, so that's working okay. The hospital itself is still having its normal quota of people visiting the hospital and being sick, taking the medicine. So the pharmacy's working good too. So, yep. And I think there are like about 3 or 4 shops actually still open in Wairau. So that's Farmlands, New World. There is another grocer in town, and they all have pretty good tikanga involved with keeping your separation and people going in and out of the shops. And I think they're nowhere near as hectic as what you got in Napier and Hastings. So I feel for the people down there. There is a lot of people in a small building. So virus slightly different, less population, so we've got more time to spread it over the day. So yeah, so the DHB is really is getting better, just like everyone else is sticking to the holding the line that Jacinda keeps putting out there. So I think the central leadership is working really well. Our as I said the other week, we're still employing a CEO, and obviously nothing's going to happen right now because of the COVID. But we're still going through that process, and we're looking at sending out an offer to another person, but they definitely won't take over, probably for another month or two, maybe 3 months.
Thank you, Charlie. Rick, you're going to have the honour of finishing us off and leading us into lunch.
A dangerous place to sit or stand between councillors and lunch, might I add. So you may be the most vulnerable to the stampede. Well, Rex, can I say that we continue to have the meeting on Zoom, now called Zoe's, with the mayors, chief executives, and we've got Nahiwi Tamono, the chief of police, Tanya, Annie from MSD and health and the MPs, and it's helped bring about a really cohesive space for the region in a way which I don't think I've ever seen before. Really constructive, really positive, and it comes at it with a very, very creative and problem-solving means. For example, someone brought up that a person come back from holiday overseas was supposed to self-isolate, and because of comments that they'd made, they became aware that they'd headed off to Taupo for a holiday. Well, the name and address was quickly given offline, and they had a visit the next day. So people are working together to make sure they get the message. This has been really good. The police have been outstanding in the cooperation with the TAs and the community. And as I said earlier, they had 12 checkpoints put up yesterday. They're going to take a tougher line, and they're going to take a tougher line over the period of the Easter break as well. There's a concern that people will feel that the pressure on COVID-19 is coming off, the figures are improving, and feel it's time now to relax. Well, we can't relax because this is a time to sort of, drive this home and make sure it's fixed completely. This is going to be a tough couple of weeks for us, but we need to stay the course and stay strong. While we've been working, the new welfare systems come online. You'll see none of this or hear none of it, but prior to the pandemic, the Civil Defence was building a new welfare system. It's been brought forward by months and has now started working. It's running in parallel to our existing one. And in the meantime, we'll have a transition to the new system. And this is a great thing because it means we'll have the opportunity to finish the job, but also trial and test it. And so far, it's working well. There are regularly parcels of food going out all over the region. I don't have the exact numbers for you at the moment, but it's working really well. There's the odd case where things aren't working, like as highlighted in the paper here the other day about schools and families. Well, Civil Defence has been around helping resolve that. There's the odd individual who says they can't get access to the supermarket or food in a paper. And interestingly, this is the paper in which we have spent considerable amounts of money advertising how to get help in 0800 numbers. And so the person who can't get it complains to the paper where the advice is contained. Anyway, we'll work our way through that. There's been some individual issues resolved. There's been other issues being resolved with the supermarkets, for example, about solo parents having to leave the kids at home or in the car because there was only one person on the trolley. All that's been fixed. So there's been this constructive problem-solving, getting fixes approach right throughout the region, and I'm really impressed with it. The other thing that's been great is that the councils, as I've indicated earlier, have put their staff across into civil defence. So we have more people who have been exposed to the civil defence processes, more people have trained up, and we've now got a greater team of people to respond in a civil defence emergency in the future than what we had before. So we've got greater capability, and for that I'm also really grateful. Health have played their part really well. As mentioned by Mike before, the number of swabs coming into the region has gone up substantially. We've geared ourselves up. And the number of tests being done on a daily basis continues to increase quite significantly. But despite this, the numbers of people we're finding with COVID-19 is very stable. Yesterday, we had one positive test and one flatlined. The thing that intrigued me the most is when we started on this, I thought we would struggle in New Zealand because we just seem to have a bit of a healthy disrespect for authority. Kiwis don't take to being told what to do. You know, why should I do that? You tell me this, grizzle, grizzle, just we always push back on. But our communities, in my view, have been absolutely magnificent. The rate of compliance has been quite superb. Yes, there's been the odd one or two who have flouted it, but they are by far and away the exceptions, not the rule. And I think what's happened in the New Zealand psyche, it's been a little bit like a working bee. Now, when the school or local community project needs a hand, everyone says, oh, well, I'll come and give you a hand. Or someone's building a carport or something like that, the mates will turn up, I'll give you a hand. And so we've had this I'll give you a hand approach. Everybody's pitched in and done their bit and done it really well. I just think when we look back on this, New Zealand will be able to pat itself on the back and say, good job, well done. But having said that, we've got 2 weeks to go minimum. So we need to stay the course, be resolute, not make any changes. We've come through so much pain to get to where we are. There's no point in being weak now and throwing away the pain of 2 weeks for some silly actions. So this is the time to finish the job, in my view.
Thanks, Rick, and thanks for the work you're doing on the front lines. I think we all appreciate it. Okay, team, we're going to break for lunch now.
James has got a question.
Okay.
So, Rex, we had a challenge with respect to Michelle, who has now gone off. Api and Mike double booked with the Three Waters hui with tangata whenua. So what I was about to suggest was that we box on with the PE item now and then break for lunch afterwards. But Michelle has just messaged to say she's gone to Alahui and coming back at 12:30, which is in 20 minutes for the PE item. I think Api, you've got to go at 1. And Mike, I don't know what your preclusions are.
So I just messaged Michelle about us splitting up. So one of the benefits of having co-chairs.
Right. Okay. So look, on the basis that Michelle's coming back at 12:30.
No, we're not, James. We're going to break for lunch and we're going to come back at 1:45. We're going to have a break.
Okay. Well, look.
I love that firm leadership.
We'll just message Michelle and Api, you'll just have to miss, I guess.
Because I don't want to constrain the debate or conversation around the public excluded either. So we want it open. So let's break down, then we've got open time, not that we want to be here all day.
Just
okay.
Chair, can we have a resolution to move into public excluded now, because we'll go straight into that 12:45?
Okay, that's a very good suggestion. Thank you, Rick and Craig. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. When we come back, we'll come back into public excluded. So the
Mr.
public.
Chair, just Leanne's waving at us furiously.
What? Yes, Leanne.
No, through you, Rex. That is all that I was after, was the resolution to go into public excluded. Thank you.
We've got it.
Just to remind everybody, you've got a separate link for the public excluded item.
That'll come up. That'll come
up. At the time, Rex, just reconfirm